Back to Miller. Oh my goodness.
Herbert.
Sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pig Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, joined by Joe. I can't predict the over-under correct Kmetz, but this is the episode that I've been waiting for the most this college football season. Week 4 slate. Normally, we give you our big 5 games and then our group of 5 games. Today, we have 7 games for you. We're hitting on all the major games this week. The best weekend, the best slate of the college football calendar, I think, until, that last week of the season where we get all the rivalry games and whatnot. But got some loaded action this week. Joe, welcome back to the show, and how are we?
Coyle, I'm fantastic. I mean, like you said, this is what, these are you get one weekend a year in the regular season that people are like, oh, wow, that this is, on paper, the best weekend of the year. I don't think we've seen a weekend this loaded in years. I mean, this slate is unbelievable. We have jam-packed great games at noon, 3:30, and 7. The only thing that could have made this week better is if they took one of the Pac-12 games that we're going to talk about and bumped them to a 10:30 slot. So then you end the day with another ranked game, and you just root for a gazillion points. This week is going to be so much fun. Can't wait for Saturday. Let's dive right into it.
All right, before we dive into this week, we will go over last week's picks real quick. I went 11-7, 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the spread, and 3-3 on the over-unders for our weekly standings. And then 0-1 on my dog of the day with Purdue, and definitely 0-1 on my lock of the week with Alabama. Dog fight with South Florida. Nobody saw that one coming. Joe, you went 8-10 overall, 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the spread, 1-5 on the total, and then you went 0-1 on your dog of the day with Charlotte, and 1-0 on your lock of the week though for Nebraska. I believe that is 3 locks now in a row.
Three straight.
All right, so we got to start turning that over to your over/under picks as well. In the meantime, all right. As we said, the best week, the best calendar of college football games this season. We even got some pretty decent Friday night ones, but none good enough to make the slate. Maybe later in the show, they might be in there for the dog of the day or lock of the week. Have to tune in to hear the end of the show. But we start on Saturday at noon. Number 4, Florida State at Clemson. I'm surprised to see Clemson didn't at least get that 25 next to their name just for the visual purposes of this one. But 12 o'clock kick on ABC at Clemson. Florida State is a 1.5-point favorite. Over/under is 55. What are your thoughts on this game, Joe? Can Clemson knock off Florida State?
I don't. I think it's going to be a very close game. I do not think Clemson can pull off the upset. Coyle, I'm with you. When you look at the rankings, Clemson, I believe, in both of the polls was that first team in the receiving votes category. So for all intents and purposes, they're ranked 26th right now. Surprised, like you, that they didn't get that extra little bump up. But I think this is going to be Clemson's kind of like the last stand for them. The last straw. I think Dabo, I don't think they're going to win this game, but if Dabo, if Clemson were to get blown out, you lose the fan base entirely, which is crazy to say because Dabo's won. Has it been 3 or they appeared in 3 national titles under Dabo?
1-2. Okay,
1-2 appeared in 4 under Dabo. He's had Clemson in it every year, but over the past couple of years, you're starting to see a couple of cracks. And this year, if they were to have, 2 losses by the end of week 4, both in ACC competition, that's not great. It really opens up the ACC race even more. But I'm going to go Florida State here, 33-31. So I'll take Florida State minus the 1.5, over of 55. This is a game I'm probably going to stay away from in real life, but for the purposes of picking the games, that's what I'm going to go with. I mean, Florida State was up 31-10. They were against Boston College. I know they almost blew it in what would have been catastrophic for them, but they did hang on. They did end up getting the win. They were, Jordan Travis hurt his shoulder. It was kind of like one of those things Norvell was like, all right, let's just pack it in. We'll play conservative. couple, special teams error, a couple of mistakes. All of a sudden, BC is, only loses by 2. No one wants to go to Chestnut Hill and play, not because it's a tough place to play, just because it's boring and no one wants to go there. Trust me, I've been to a game at Boston College. It's not an electric stadium. That's the one game a year you're going to see that stadium packed out for. The rest of the year, it's going to be 70, 80% empty. So I think it was just one of those. Florida State took their foot off the gas. Boston College had a couple of crazy breaks. Florida State was lucky there wasn't another 5-10 minutes left of the game. Maybe it goes differently. But I think the Seminoles are just better than Clemson. I don't think Clemson has the firepower to keep up with Florida State. I think the home crowd obviously is going to make a big difference. I just don't. I think it's going to come down late. Jordan Travis is going to make a couple big plays that Cade Klubnik will not be able to answer. So I'm going to go take the Noles here.
I'm going with my Seminoles here this week too, Joe. 35-24. So I'll take FSU -1.5 and over 55. I'm all over Florida State in this one, though. I think this could be a beatdown. Maybe Clemson gets like a late touchdown to make it a little bit more close. But last week was a clear look-ahead spot with that Boston College game. And like you said, Joe, they got up big. Travis hurt his shoulder. They might have just tried to kind of, like you said, pack it in the rest of the game and not really show too much, knowing they had this game coming up. This is the biggest game on their calendar until the ACC championship. If they go perfect from here on out or whatever. But it's weird to see Clemson without that number next to their name, and Florida State all the way up at 4 from what we've been used to over the past decade or so out of the ACC. But this FSU team is just more experienced and more deep at every single position, I think, except inside linebacker. I would give the advantage to Clemson, maybe some guys on the defensive line. But we saw in that LSU game how deep and how talented this Florida State team is. And I just don't think Clemson is that same team, not just on paper, but just guys out in the field that are dogs as well. Like Florida State has some dudes that'll really set the tone in this one. And I just think Clemson might be lacking that right now. FSU, though, I think to win this game, especially on the road, I think they should try to make this a shootout. Make Clemson go out there and score 30 to 40 points on you if they want a chance to beat you, because Florida State's defense is good enough and their offense is more than capable of going out there and putting up points. Clemson might have a really strong defense by year's end, but I think they're still kind of getting used to some of these younger guys and young personnel in the lineup. Florida State can beat you either way, but I don't think Clemson's able to beat you in a shootout type style. So if Florida State does go out there, put up 40 points or something, I think that's going to be a tough task for Clemson to get to. So it's not going to be easy, as you said, Joe, going into this environment, but this is FSU's breakthrough year, and I think everyone in that program knows it. They can all feel it. They got over that first hurdle with that LSU game. Now let's get past Clemson, and we are off to the races. We're running. We have a pretty comfortable slate ahead of us to go undefeated and maybe even be like the number one team going into the college football playoffs. So I'm going Florida State. This is their kind of Super Bowl. I think it means more to them than that LSU game, just being a conference game and trying to dethrone Clemson at the top there. So I think if they show up ready to go like that LSU game, this one might not be close at all. So give me FSU 35, Clemson 24, FSU -1.5 and over a 55 there as FSU makes a statement to the rest of the nation. All right, second game of the week. The Buffs back on the show again. Number 19, Colorado at number 10, Oregon. 3:30 kick on ABC. Oregon is a whopping 20.5-point favorite. Over under is 72.5. Joe, give me your thoughts on this game, and can the Buffs continue to pull off some magic?
I do not think the Buffs are going to be able to pull off some magic in this one. I'm going to say really quickly, Coyle, about the last game. Just really quick, if Clemson, pulls off this upset, there's going to be some talks about the Duke Blue Devils and the college football playoff. And I know that's a crazy statement to say out loud. Just want to get that one out there because all of a sudden that Clemson win looks a lot better. Duke has Notre Dame next week coming off of the Ohio State game, which we're going to talk to later, going to their place. So that could be really interesting if Clemson were to pull off that upset there. However, getting back to this game, I'm going Oregon 55, Colorado 31. I just don't think that Colorado's defense is there, especially without Travis Hunter. If he doesn't play, I just think Oregon's going to be able to, Bo Nix is going to have the game of his life, even though I hate Bo Nix because I can never pick the right side with him. I'm going to take Oregon to cover that 20.5-point spread. I'm going to take the over in this game. for the picks. Another game, I hate to be boring, but a lot of these games, just because I really don't know which way to go with them. I don't know how many of these I'm going to really bet this week, which might be good because I got hammered on the NFL slate over the weekend. But I just think the Ducks are a better team, like not to be boring or cliche. I think
They are
Shador
20.5 point favorites, so.
I was gonna say I don't like Shador Sanders is a freak, but I don't think he has the weapons like this. He's not going up against the Rams this week, needing to make a miracle comeback at home in a game which they should not have won. They pulled victory from the jaws of defeat. I think Shador's still going to ball out. I think Colorado's still going to be able to put up some points, but it's going to be a result of being behind for so much in this game. I think Oregon's going to be able to kind of have their way with Colorado, and a really big statement for Oregon being the 3:30 ABC game, probably, at that time slot, the biggest game at that time, that's going to probably have the most eyes on them. This is kind of what I was alluding to before. The Pac-12, I get it's your last year ever, but you might have the best conference in college football, and you're putting two of your ranked games out at the same time. Feel like, you could have spaced them out a little bit better, but I don't know. That's just me. That's why I'm not in TV and I'm sitting here talking to you right now.
My mind and using just logic and football, I think knowledge that we have, it tells me like this one could get ugly and Oregon can roll, but then my gut tells me that the wheels are starting to fall off for a little for Colorado. Hunter's out. They needed that extra time to escape an inferior Colorado State program. We're starting to run into some depth issues for Colorado. But then you also remember, you think the last time these guys were 20-point dogs, they went out there on the road and won outright. So it's kind of like, what do we expect from this team? I don't expect them to give up and fight. Give up and quit. I expect them to go out there and fight for the entire 60 minutes. Can they cover that 20.5? I think so. So I'll go Oregon with the outright win, 48-30. So Colorado plus 20.5 and over 72.5. But I think we saw, Joe, last week, for as much as we were able to watch of that game, that this Colorado team has a few dudes on it, as obviously with Shador and how well he's played, Travis Hunter when he's been on the field. But this is still a team that is lacking some of that top-end talent. And TCU, that was a huge upset with the 20.5, but they're not looking like a legit threat this year. Nebraska, they're not really world beaters right now either. This is the first real team I think they're playing, and we could see kind of the wheels start to fall off a little bit. But they're going to fight and they're going to give effort. And if we've seen anything from Dion, he can coach his ass off. So I think the biggest thing in this game, though, Joe, is the advantage-wise is what Oregon can present on offense with the balance they have. They put up 587 yards per game on offense, 357 of those coming through the air and 229 on the ground. So they can hurt you both ways on offense. When you look at Buffalo, they can only beat you through the air right now. The Buffs. 418 passing yards per game with Shador, but then they're only averaging 61 rushing yards per game. So if you're able to get to Shador Sanders, especially with Travis Hunter out of the lineup, they're not exactly the greatest pass catchers in the world out there right now, not the greatest offensive line. If you're able to get to Shador and make this a one-dimensional team, they're going to be able to roll to a win. But I just can't take or bet against Colorado right now to do anything except cover the spread. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair, but I do think Oregon pushes them around a little bit at the line of scrimmage, give them a slice of humble pie. But I will take the Buffs to cover, maybe on a backdoor towards the end. High-scoring affair, though. So we'll go Oregon 48, Colorado 30, Colorado plus 20.5 and over 72.5. Third game of the week, we go to the SEC down to Tuscaloosa. Number 15, Ole Miss at number 13, Alabama. 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Bama is a 6.5-point favorite, over under 55 here. Ole Miss coming off a win last week, and then Alabama coming off a very close, ugly win to South Florida. What are your expectations for this game, Joe?
I think Bama is going to take control of this game. I think this is going to be a little bit of a wake-up call for Ole Miss. I have the schedule right here. They Tulane, they beat, with Tulane's backup quarterback. They beat Mercer. They beat Georgia Tech. All great. And the Georgia Tech game, that's why I got it here on my phone. I wanted to make sure it was great. At one point, they were only up 24-17 in the fourth quarter. They, came alive with 7:45 left and really kind of put that game to rest. But I don't know. I mean, if this game was, in Oxford, I would be completely flipping my pick. I feel like this is going to be a very juice crowd for Alabama. Like, as stupid as it sounds, I know Texas was in there a couple weeks ago. This might be one of the most important Alabama home games in a long time, because when's the last time we saw Alabama in week 4 with their backs against the wall? Like, Bama needs to win out the rest of the year if they want to make it to the playoff, which is crazy to say. Like we were saying earlier, a lot of rumors with Milroe last week not playing. I saw, Milroe might not have been a suspension. It might have been Saban. Like, I saw some Alabama fan being like, Saban wanted to prove to Tommy Rees that his boy from Notre Dame wasn't that good, which, trust me, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I know Tyler Buckner's not that good. He proved that last week. Tommy Rees might be a little bit in over his head year one as the Alabama offensive coordinator. But all that being said, I just don't see a world where we're looking at an Alabama team with 2 losses. Like, if Bama loses this game just because of, like, Bama fatigue always being highly ranked, even if Bama loses by a point, you might see Bama at, like, 20, 21, which is unheard of. But I just think Saban has a couple, Saban's not dead yet. He's not dead. It's not over till it's over with him. I think Milroe's going to go out there, have a pretty solid game. They're not going to do anything special. They're just going to kind of out-physical you. I feel like this is going to kind of be an old-school throwback Bama game. Defense is going to make a couple plays late. I think Ole Miss, is going to kind of realize that Bama is a much higher step up than anything they've faced yet this season.
Yeah, the reason why this entire offseason I was talking about Jalen Milroe being the starting quarterback for this team, not because of what he can do with his arm, but what he can do with his legs. And this Alabama team doesn't have the luxury of having Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, any of those loaded Bama receivers from the past. This is a team that is just built to kind of bully you up front and win at the line of scrimmage and run the football. And Jalen Milroe might be one of the best quarterbacks in college football at doing just that. When they try to switch it up a little bit last week and go with some passers, we saw what happened. This team doesn't have the necessary skill players, I think, to be like what Texas did to them, where they went in there and threw the ball around the yard and spread it out to all these guys that are future first-round picks. Alabama doesn't have those guys on the roster right now. So Milroe is certainly the best option for this team going forward. Whether they win this game or not, the roster around the other quarterbacks are not talented enough for this roster of the skill positions to really elevate their play. So I think Milroe's got to be the guy. You got to take your lumps with him. I know they lost that Texas game, but he wasn't the reason that they lost that game. The defense still didn't really even play that well. But this Alabama team just, I don't think, has the exact juice necessarily that we've seen from them before. But I still am going to take them at home here to win this game. The books are still giving them a lot of respect, and Vegas is more right than not. So I'm going to go Bama 31, Ole Miss 27. I do think there is a chance Ole Miss wins this game, so I'll thread the needle there with the plus 6.5, and I'll take the over of 55. Quick note on this one, though. If you believe that Ole Miss will win this game, will go into Alabama and win, they also host LSU next week. They have a golden opportunity in front of them to really take control of the driver's seat in the SEC West. And look at Jackson Dart's Heisman odds as well. If he goes to Tuscaloosa here and gets a win, he might jump considerably in the Heisman odds. Grab him now because he's at plus 12,000. He already has 1,065 total yards of offense and 9 total touchdowns on the year. He goes to Alabama, has a big-time win, and then if he takes down LSU as well, he's going to be right up there in the top 5. He doesn't have to go out there and have 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, but if he goes out there and is the main reason they win, he's going to be certainly up there in that conversation. So look at those potential some futures instead of maybe taking like Ole Miss to win straight up this week. Maybe just take the future on like a Jackson Dart or them to go and win the SEC or just the SEC West. I'd say to look into that. But the real question I think in this one is, can Bama shake off that home loss to Texas? They still have the entire SEC slate in front of them. I don't care that they lost that Texas game. It was ugly against South Florida. They still have an entire SEC schedule and control their own destiny from here on out. You win out, you make the playoffs. So I still getting the respect of that 6.5. That Vegas still loves Saban. Saban's only lost 9 times at home as a head coach during his time at Bama. I believe his record is 103-9. So it's very rare for this to happen, especially twice in one season, twice in a row. I feel like that's just unheard of because it's never happened before. So I'm going to go with Alabama to get this outright win. Just can't declare them dead just yet. But a loss here would potentially put a nail in the coffin for this Alabama dynasty as a whole. I mean, Ole Miss, I think, needs to make this a shootout and hope Quinshon Judkins can have some explosive plays to help them separate in this game, because this Bama team, as I talked about at the beginning, not equipped to play offense with them score for score. So Bama needs to control the tempo of this game, make it kind of lower scoring. Even I have the overhitting, still a 31-27 win over Ole Miss. I think they'll take that. That'll be at their style of play. So play this at a neutral site. I think I might take the Ole Miss Rebels, but since it's in Tuscaloosa, I'm going to roll with history and trends on my side in this one. Take Alabama to win, but I'll take Ole Miss to cover. So Ole Miss plus 6.5 and over a 55. All right, another Pac-12 game here. Number 22 UCLA at number 13 Utah. Two undefeated teams. 3:30 on Fox. Utah is a 5-point favorite. Over under is 51.5.
This is the game that out of all of them, I'm definitely the most torn on. I'm going to go Utah here, 27-24. I'm going to take UCLA plus the 5. I'm going to go under 51.5 in this one. That's just because that's how Utah's been winning games this year. Even last week against FCS Weber State, they won 31-7. They know without Cam Rising, they're not going to be a team that's going to be lighting up the scoreboard. They know they got to get it done with their defense. And I think Kyle Whittingham, is obviously the coach to do that. This is a Utah squad that has been sneakily one of the best football programs of the last 15 years. They've always been consistently pretty good. And a big difference, not sound like a broken record, UCLA's coming to them. This is going to be a crazy, hyped game. Utah fans are going to be going crazy. I believe 1:30 local time there for the kickoff. This is a game I would have liked. If this game was 7:30 Eastern time kickoff, I would have taken Utah to win by a bajillion points. I still think Utah is just a little bit better than UCLA. UCLA hasn't played a Power 5 team yet this year, even though I really do like Dante Moore. I really hope, NIL doesn't, in the transfer portal, doesn't make him want to leave UCLA, and especially with them going to the Big Ten next year. I think UCLA could be a real contender going forward, especially in the 12-team playoff era. So that's really exciting. Seeing Chip Kelly finally, which seems like, he's been sitting out there for a couple of years, finally, gonna, getting things going out there. And it's crazy to me also that UCLA is the 22nd ranked team in the country right now, and they might be the 6th best team in the Pac-12. It's just so stupid how these teams are all good this year, and then next year they're all gone. I'll say that a million more times, but give me the Utes here. I feel like Utah is just going to find a way at home like they do almost all the time. It kind of happened with USC last year. Looked like USC was about to kind of run away with it. Utah came back, won by a point. A couple years ago, I remember Oregon went to Utah. I think the first year you and I did the show, Coyle, or it might have been 2 years ago, and Utah beat them. I think what it felt like 50 points, and I bet on Oregon, and I was like, wow, that was stupid. But give me the Utes here. A big early season win. With the schedule, they got it tough. They got a couple of tough road games. I don't know how much we're gonna be talking about Utah as the season goes on, but for right now, I think Utah pulls off the win here. Sorry to the Bruins. Next year could be legit.
I'm going to go with Utah as well at home, 26-23. So I'll thread the needle with UCLA plus 5, but Utah straight up. And I'll go with the under 51.5. UCLA, quick note on them. They've won every game this year by double digits. And as you were talking about, Joe, freshman quarterback Dante Moore is starting to come into his own since he's been given the keys to the offense. The first game, he kind of shared some reps with 2 other guys. Now we're getting to see him in full force and really seeing flashes of what he was hyped up to be. This is a kid too, Joe, when you were talking about him hopefully not transferring. I think one of the big reasons that he went there is because of UCLA going to the Big Ten, because this is a Detroit kid. So he's going to have the opportunity to kind of go there and play in the Midwest once again. But he's looking like a legit quarterback, and maybe he'll be the best quarterback out of the Big Ten going into next year. Utah has clawed their way to 3-0, though, with rising out of the lineup, as you were talking about. This is their toughest test, though, with this UCLA offense. UCLA is putting up 527 yards per game and 40.3 points per game. Haven't exactly played murderer's row yet, but still, those are impressive numbers led by a freshman quarterback. So Utah does have that home field advantage on their side and that strong defense that's only allowing 10.3 points per game. I think that could be the difference, and Dante Moore might get that kind of welcome to college football type moment in this one against a real stingy, tough Utah team that's going to try and beat you up at the line of scrimmage and really hit the quarterback in this one. So I'm going to take the Utes to find a way to win at home, but UCLA to get that cover at +5. But also, Joe, I think we could also look at it come next week or whenever we're breaking down UCLA again and be like, all right, that was actually Dante Moore's let me put on a show, welcome to college football moment. This is Dante Moore type thing. And he goes out there, has a big game against this really good Utah defense. And now the rest of the Pac-12 for the rest of the season on notice, because that's just another guy you throw into the mix of these loaded quarterbacks. So going to be a close watch on this one. Haven't really seen much of UCLA. I'm excited to see more of them. And then Utah, been an ugly watch so far. I hit a few unders on them, but I'm excited to see what they do against a better opponent in UCLA. All right, we go to yet again another Pac-12 contest. Number 14, Oregon State at number 21, Washington State, 7 p.m. on Fox. Oregon State is a 2.5-point favorite, over under a 56. Before you get into this one, Joe, do you want to touch on what these two teams could potentially do next year?
Oh, Coyle, it could be the most sickos thing ever. And for those who don't know, so obviously the Pac-12 is breaking up. Currently, the only two teams that are remaining in the Pac-12 starting next season are Oregon State and Washington State. There's a rule in the NCAA bylaws, whatever, that you have a 2-year grace period if you dip below 8 teams to remain a conference and stay at that current membership. So there is a world, I don't know if it'll happen, I pray it does, it'd be so funny, that next year the Pac-12 could be the Pac-2, and it could just be Oregon State and Washington State playing for a conference title. And I would love if they just did a 12-team or a 12-game series. They played once a week, alternating venues. I think that'd be hilarious. I think it would be the dumbest thing in the world. It would be great. It would just be pure college football awesomeness. I really hope that happens. I don't think it will, but going back to the game, I'm going to go my Beavers here. Oregon State 31, Washington State 27. So I'm going to take Oregon State minus the 2.5. I'm going to take the over of 56. I don't know why. I really like this Oregon State team. I think DJ is a lot more comfortable now, being back on the West Coast, being, with playing for a fan base that is so rabidly obsessed with their team in a healthy way, not like the Clemson expecting national titles way. Like, let's be honest here, Oregon State's always had a great fan base, but they kind of know it's like, all right, well,
we have a ceiling.
Yeah, like last year, 10-3 was a miracle season for them. But now this year, obviously being really good, they love it. Especially with, the uncertainty in the future. I think Oregon State could be in for a type of miracle season. I think my bold prediction as of right now, I think Oregon State is going to make it to the Pac-12 title game. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but you look at their schedule, and Washington State, they both avoid USC. They both still have to play, a ton of other teams. There are 8 ranked teams in the Pac-12 right now, which is so stupid in a good way. Like, just how good the conference is. I know I said it again. This is probably the most we're ever going to talk about the Pac-12 football this season on Beef. But I think DJ just being settled in, dialed in. Washington State had a big win against Wisconsin, but we're kind of seeing after last week, it's like, who knows how, Wisconsin might have a lot lower of a ceiling than some people, including myself, were thinking. So I think Oregon State's going to win this game, get a big, win going on the road to the Palouse. I believe next week Oregon State hosts Utah, and then Washington State goes to UCLA. So, kind of flip-flopping with the last game and this game that we talked about. But give me the Beavers, and going forward, I do. I think this is going to be a special season for Oregon State.
I'm going to go with Wazoo here as the home dog. I'm going to go Wazoo 30, Oregon State 27. So Wazoo plus 2.5, over 56 just hitting. This game is going to fly under the radar, but I think it might actually be like the most tightly contested battle of the day, maybe the best game of the day, just because it's two teams that I think are pretty deadlock even. I mean, we have great games. We haven't even touched on Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Iowa yet, and then we already hit on a bunch of great games. But this team, just because of the school names and like the overall football brands, as you were kind of touching on with Oregon State, same thing with Washington State, not exactly Alabama, Georgia that we're talking about historically here. So people might not be that hyped up about this one, but I'm telling you, get to a TV for this one. Turn this one on before the Ohio State, Notre Dame, Iowa, Penn State games. Like, this is going to be a really good football game. It's going to come down to the wire. We have 3 games on the list for ranked versus ranked Pac-12 schools. So that's just pretty insane with what you're saying with 8 teams. I mean, this is just a conference that is center stage right now, and you can thank Buffalo, or excuse me, I keep saying Buffalo, Colorado, the Buffs, for that. But this is going to be a loaded conference just all year. Cam Ward might be the best quarterback in college football that you haven't heard of unless you keep a close eye on the Pacific Northwest. A school like Washington State might fly under the radar, but a guy like Cam Ward deserves more attention. 986 passing yards, 9 passing touchdowns this year, and he's leading his team to 48.3 points per game. So make sure to get in front of your TV and tune into this game. Oregon State built like a Big Ten squad, tough up front. They want to make this a rock fight type game. But we saw what happened when Wisconsin, who's kind of built similarly to Oregon State. I know Wisconsin's trying to spread it out a little bit more this year, but their roster is still heavily invested up front, the beef up front in the trenches. Washington State had their way with them, winning by 9. They couldn't keep up with Cam Ward and the Cougars offense. I think it's going to be a similar type thing here. And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if this winds up being the best overall game. But I think it's disrespectful to make Wazoo a home dog here. So I like them to take advantage of that and capitalize it, win this one outright, cover that plus 2.5, obviously, in the over of 56 hitting. Wazoo takes down the Beavers. All right, Joe, the game I assume you're looking forward to the most. Hopefully you get done with your afternoon activities that you're able to get in front of the TV for this one. Number 6, Ohio State at number 9, Notre Dame. 7:30 kick on NBC. Ohio State, a 3-point road favorite here. Over-under is 54. Give me your thoughts on the Irish, Joe.
I think Notre Dame is going to win this game 31-20. I believe this is going to be Sam Hartman's coming out party to the national audience. Notre Dame, I know they had, they going to be every week, obviously, because of the deal. They played Navy, the week 0 game, a lot of eyes were on. But Notre Dame has looked very impressive this season. Going on the road against NC State and doing what they did in the fourth quarter is very impressive. That's what a top 10 team is supposed to do. Ohio State, kind of like one of those weeks, like I know they started clicking last week against Western Kentucky, but it kind of felt like one of those games where if they didn't do that, there was going to be no confidence in that program going into this game. I think it's going to be back and forth for about 2.5 to 3 quarters, and then I think the fourth quarter Notre Dame's defensively is going to step up, force Ohio State a couple turnovers. This is Sam Hartman, I think, could take the reins on an early. Why am I blanking on the word? I was like, why am I blanking on the word Heisman right now? Sam Hartman could take early grips on the Heisman race. Ohio State isn't playing the Penguins of Youngstown State this weekend. They're going to Notre Dame. Going to be one of the biggest Notre Dame home games in a while. I know Clemson a couple years ago when they were number 1, but that was COVID. So, it kind of doesn't really count in my opinion. This is a huge game. 2 massive brands, maybe the 2 biggest brands, or at least 2 of the top 5 biggest brands in college football. This is going to be a massively watched game, biggest game of the weekend. All the shows are going there. I know Game Day's going there. Barstool, I believe, is doing their show there. I can't wait.
Doing their show there.
Yeah, we'll see you there. I just can't wait for this game. I'm just going to sit down on the couch, pray that Notre Dame can get a big-time victory. And this if Notre Dame wins this game, their schedule going forward, they get USC coming to them in a couple of weeks. They go to Duke next week, which terrifies me, win or loss. But there's no reason why Notre Dame can't take control of this game. This is Mark Freeman's, this is a big game for his legacy going forward at Notre Dame. Starting the way he started last year, not great. Having, some good wins, but nothing great last year. This is a real chance for him to put Notre Dame back on the map with NIL, with the transfer portal, be like, this is a national power again. This is the school you should want to go to. You don't need to go to the SEC. big opportunity for Notre Dame. I think they take it.
I like Notre Dame in this one too, Joe. So let's fight on Irish. Notre Dame 30, Ohio State 27. So Notre Dame covers that +3 over a 54 hitting. I had this in the offseason with Notre Dame taking down Ohio State, and they haven't given me a reason to go against them yet. This is their first major test, though. They had a little test, I think, going to NC State. They wound up pulling away and covering in that one. But don't forget, last year Notre Dame held Ohio State to only 21 points, the lowest of the season. So Marcus Freeman might have some answers for this kind of spread it out, throw it around the yard type of attack. I said, too, though, if Notre Dame makes the playoff this year by going 11-1 or 12-0, they need to at least win 2 out of these 3 games. With this game, the Ohio State game, the Clemson game, and the USC game. They need to win 2 out of those 3 to just be in the discussion at the end. If they were on the table, I think that they should get in, regardless how Clemson fares this year. USC is going to be up there, and then Ohio State, I think, will still be up there as well. So this is a huge game to kind of get off on the right foot for their 3 biggest games of the season. Last week, Ohio State looked like their old selves. They put up 63 against Western Kentucky. I missed on that one, but McCord appears to be settling in, but this is definitely his biggest test yet. This Notre Dame team isn't Western Kentucky or Youngstown State like you were talking about. I expect Notre Dame to throw a lot of different looks at him, though, at McCord on defense and try to get him off his spot, not allow OSU to get into that rhythm with all those really good receivers that they have. So if Marvin Harrison finds a way to take advantage of this Notre Dame secondary, then it could be a long night for the Irish, but I think Kyle McCord might not just be ready for this moment yet, and I think Marcus Freeman might have a few tricks up his sleeve. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame here at home. I have more confidence and faith in Sam Hartman at the quarterback spot right now, and I just think this is, like you were saying, Joe, one of the biggest Notre Dame home games probably in the past 5 years, and they win this game, they're right up there in the conversation for one of the top 5 teams in the country. All right, last game of the night. The whiteout game up at Penn State, number 24, Iowa at number 7, Penn State, 7:30 kick on CBS. This is a weird night game for CBS. Don't really see those, but now with all the new TV deals, I guess we're seeing more of those. Penn State, -14 still. Over-under is 41.5. What are your thoughts on the whiteout, Joe?
The whiteout is simple every year for me. You take Penn State. I'm taking Penn State here, 31-16. So I think it's going to be close just because of how Iowa plays with their defense. But I'm still going to take Penn State to cover the 14 points. I'm going to take the over, which I really, really hate. But I'm going to take the over 41.5 just because I think Penn State is going to be just fine. I think Iowa's going to get, one big defensive play that'll set them up with a short field for the offense. But Iowa just doesn't have the horses. Iowa doesn't score the ball. Iowa isn't going to be a team that is going to put up 30 points all of a sudden. I know Western Michigan last week, but I'm sorry, Penn State's not Western Michigan. Penn State doing what a top 10 team should do against Illinois last week, took control on the road, never really looked like it was in doubt. We were watching a game for a little while last week in Coyle. Give me the Nittany Lions here. Not a lot of emphasis. When it's the whiteout game, don't overthink it.
Yeah, Penn State answered a lot of questions for me last week. Drew Allard didn't play that well, and they still went out there, dominated, covered the spread, and showed that they can go and win on the road in the Big Ten. That was a big step for me, and they showed they could kind of win ugly too. And that's most likely what this Penn State game versus Iowa will be. It'll probably be an uglier game, lower scoring. I don't really think I would ever feel comfortable taking an Iowa over unless we just thought Penn State was going to go out there and get the 42 points themselves. So I'll go with the under here, but like you were saying, the momentum that I think this Penn State program has heading into the whiteout game, don't overthink it. We're going to go at Penn State 28-10, so Penn State -14 and over 41.5. Thinking big picture-wise, though, the great thing about this Penn State team is I think they can beat you in a multitude of ways. You want to play in like a rock fight. You want to play defense and have this game just be who's going to run the football better. Penn State can do that and go out there and beat you with their 2 great running backs. You want to run up the score and make this a shootout? Okay, we can throw it a little bit, but our running game is really explosive to put up points too. So going forward in that Michigan game, they might have to slow it down, play a little bit lower scoring. The Ohio State game, they might have to go out there and win in a shootout. I think this Penn State team can do either. This is the best Penn State team I can remember, and now with the whiteout at home against an Iowa team that is still struggling to put up points for what it seems like the 24th straight year that I've been on this earth now, it's pretty wild that they haven't been able to adapt. I feel like this one's all Penn State, too much momentum and energy, and they should coast to a double-digit win here, bringing them to 4-0, and then likely are staring 6-0 straight in the eyes as well with Northwestern and UMass coming up before that big Ohio State game in the middle of the season where they should be clicking. So love Penn State this weekend, 28-10, Penn State -14, and we will take the under of 41.5. All right, we head to the dog of the day and the lock of the week now. We'll go to the dog of the day first. Let's see if we can bark this week, Joseph. I'll bark on Friday night with San Diego State +210 on the money line, +6.5 at home. They are playing Boise State at home in this one. The Broncos aren't their usual selves so far. They're off to only a 1-2 start. And the San Diego State Aztecs, they know how to make games ugly, slow it down, muck it up, a short week. Just a bad recipe, I think, for a team going on the road in a conference game, especially when this Boise State team doesn't have necessarily the momentum or juice that they normally do in this conference. So I think San Diego State, good chance to kind of knock off that top dog in the conference with Boise State at home. +210 on the money line. I would sprinkle on that, but I definitely like the +6.5. They know how to keep these games close. So give me the Aztecs this week as my dog of the day.
Fair warning before I get into my dog of the day and my lock of the week. If there are young children watching, turn away because this is ugly. I'm going very ugly with my picks this week. Bowling Green +425. They're +12.5. They're at home. They're taking on the Ohio Bobcats. Ohio is coming off of what might be their biggest win, I don't know, in my lifetime. They beat Iowa State, a Power 5 team, at home, 10-7. Gross football. Celebrating, they have to go to Bowling Green this week. Bowling Green has played two very good teams. They played Michigan last week, but week 1 they played against Liberty, who right now might be the favorites to win the Conference USA. So that was on the road as well. Two pretty solid teams there. Bowling Green coming off a game they were never really in. Ohio coming off that high of beating a Power 5 team in the Big 12 representative Iowa State. Give me the Falcons here. Definitely going to take them on the spread. Might sprinkle the money line as well.
All right, and now for the lock of the week. So fade me and tail Joe on this one because I've been cold. He's been hot. I'm going to go sticking with the theme as you did, an ugly game, turn away. Probably not even flipping this one on the TV, but under 38 in the Minnesota Northwestern games is a chance to be one of the ugliest offensive games of the season. I think it screams like a 17-13 Minnesota win. 5 of Minnesota's last 6 conference games have gone under the projected point total as well. So if you want to follow the trends, if you're a fan of the trends, look into that one. Under 38, Minnesota Northwestern. Don't you dare watch it, but just stat track it on your phone.
My pick is ugly, to say the least. Louisville got them at -13.5. They are taking on Boston College. Terrible, ugly game. Another one I won't watch a second of. Boston College coming off of that almost comeback against Florida State. The emotional letdown of, we actually really suck. We lost to Northern Illinois and Holy Cross. Going to Louisville, who a team that because of their schedule is very much alive for, to be in competition in the ACC race, coming off a weird game against Indiana where I think they were up 21-0. They ended up winning like 21-14, kind of similar, not caliber-wise to the Florida State Boston College game, but like game they were up and almost blew. They get to come home here. Boston College having to go to Louisville after a game like that. This Boston College's first trip away from home this season, actually. They're also the number one. They're the most penalized team in the country. Boston College leads America in penalties. So I'm going to take Louisville here minus the 13.5. Feel like this is kind of going to be a game where Boston College, if they haven't already, this might be a game where they quit, fire the head coach after the game, and kind of just reset for any type of hope going forward.
All right. Well, that'll do it. That was probably going to be our longest episode of the season, closing in on 45 minutes now. But had a lot to get into, wanted to hit on a lot this week. Joe, before we head out, I'll give one first, give you a second to think about it. Give me a bold prediction for this weekend. Mine is Bo Nix throws for 350-plus yards and 5 touchdowns on Colorado this weekend. in that victory, leading to the over and a big time Oregon win. Give me yours.
I think McCord gets benched for Ohio State.
Wow.
I do.
Right.
I believe, and I'm not saying this is going to be for the whole season, like going forward, but I believe, I know I was saying it could be a close game, but if we're going to get bold, he could have a lot of trouble with this Notre Dame defense. He finds himself in trouble early, commit a couple of turnovers, all of a sudden kind of loses faith in the team. They may have to make a switch. You might see Marvin Harrison Jr. getting all pissed off because he can't get the ball. You could see a couple of things happen. I think he gets benched by halftime. Ohio State struggles and loses in Notre Dame.
All right. There we go. That'll do it for this week of the Beef Up Front College Football Show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we will talk next week.